What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick.
My name is Dave.
And this is the Deep Dive, and it is a Father's Day special Deep Dive. Not that we're really doing anything crazy,
Right.
but we are filming on Sunday. It is Father's Day, so happy Father's Day, Dave.
Happy Father's Day, Nick. I see you've got the
I got the shirt on. That's right.
Yeah, so that's nice.
It is. I'm a big Marvel fan, so the girls got me this. Actually, they got me this last year, but... You know, it's one of those things. I was like, I'll wear it this year.
And did you get a bobblehead that I see?
A Funko Pop.
What is that?
So it's like a figurine that has like a big head or whatever, and like the small body. It doesn't bobble or anything, but it's a collectible type thing. Like I collect some Marvel one, like just a bunch of variable ones. I don't know, and so they got one made of me.
Nice.
It was cute.
Yeah.
It even has our little dog. Because they're always like, this is your dog. He only listens to you. So,
Well, good.
Yeah.
Well, good. And happy Father's Day. Folks will be listening to this on Wednesday, but
yeah, they'll be a little
we
late.
have to be in the context of where we are.
That's
and so,
right. That's right.
If we're kind of going a little quickly today, it's because I think we're trying to slide out and get to some other Father's Day stuff, celebrations. So, but we want to get this recorded. So let's get started, shall we?
Let's get going. All right, Dave. Well, during the intro, we didn't actually say that we are kind of in the middle of this series called Storyteller, where we're looking at some of those parables of Jesus, and today we are talking about the prodigal son, which you could argue should be more about the loving father, which I'm sure you'll get to that in here in a second. But before we do this, I did think that it was important that since it is Father's Day, that we have at least a couple bad dad jokes.
I'll give you the opportunity to do that.
I have them ready, so
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Okay. Why did the jaguar eat a tightrope walker?
Why?
He was looking for a well-balanced meal.
Okay.
Okay. Next one. What do you call a sleeping bull?
No idea.
A bulldozer.
A bulldozer. Okay.
And last but not least, what do you call an alligator in a vest?
I don't know.
An investigator.
Well, those are great. Nick, thank you very much.
Davey, you're not giving me a lot of confidence that you actually enjoyed those.
Well, that's the beauty of the dad joke.
That's right.
Kind of
Somebody
stuff.
out there laughed, and I appreciate you.
Yeah, but more people are grimacing.
That's okay. I'll take that. I'll take that. Well, Dave, why don't you kind of jump us into the sermon that we were talking about today? And
we're looking at this. I thought it'd be a good summertime series because we love stories. And lots of times, there hasn't been that many this summer, but lots of times a lot of movies come out in the summer blockbusters because of the power of storytelling. So, we're some of those powerful stories that we have are the parables of Jesus. The storytelling. Jesus used those to change people, to teach, sometimes to confuse people, because a lot of his parables they're not immediately understandable. They're meant to be thought about and pondered. But the first two that we did were not like that. We did a parable of the Good Samaritan last week and the prodigal son today. But one of the things that I mentioned in sort of the opening about stories is how important it is for us to know one another's stories, and how that can change us. So once you understand a person's story, sometimes it can explain their behavior, explain how they are, how they became to be. So I think it's important in the church that we take that time with our neighbors to learn their stories and get to know them. But so Jesus is there with teaching, and this group of Pharisees were really beginning to criticize him and say, hey, all he does is he hangs out with sinners. The type of people he hangs out with, and tax collectors and, all the, people that were the undesirables in that day. And so Jesus tells three stories to teach them. Whether they got it or not, we don't know. That's part of how we have to work with that story and how we're going to apply it. But he tells three stories in succession, and I use he used numbers there. He starts with big. He starts with, there's a shepherd who had 100 sheep. One gets lost, and he, leaves the 99 in the wilderness, and that's another discussion for another day about the implications there. But leaves the 99 in the wilderness and goes to find the one. Woman who has 10 coins, she loses one, and then she, turns the house upside down, goes on a house cleaning spree, finds the lost coin. In both cases, it talks in the end about them rejoicing. And then, so he's gone from 100 to 10, and he goes to 2. There's a father who had 2 sons. And so I'll go ahead and say on the onset, I said at the end this time, what is this story really about? Yeah. There's a father who had 2 sons. It's about the father and the love of the father. And so, the prodigal son's so well known, right? Yeah. And there's something about it that I think just can identify us. We can identify with. I think we all have felt like the prodigal at one time in our life. And so the fact that we would be received back in and loved that way, despite of what we've done, is very powerful to us. It moves us, it changes us. But we need to see ourselves in different places in the story than just the prodigal. But anyway, so this guy, what did he do? And so the part of the story that if we're acting it out in skit, talk about it going off and having wild living and squandering on prostitutes and gambling and all that kind of stuff. But really, to me, the real crime, the real sin there was just the arrogance that he had to go to his dad while his dad was still living and say, I want my inheritance now. Yeah. Because he is in essence saying to him, I wish you were dead so I could have what's coming to me now. Yep. And then what that would have meant to that family, that father who, we're reading into the story now, but let's just say he has worked hard to sort of build his wealth, to build the land and the property and the things that he had. And so if he gives him what he would have gotten in the inheritance, then that means that they're going to have to sell off half of what they have while the father's still living. Right. And so he does it. Yeah. He does it, which is crazy.
Yeah. He makes the move, and he kind of just was like, I'm just going to go do my own thing. And he made his choices, and then kind of gets to this spot where he regrets it.
So do you see places where, because I told what was his name, Veruca Salt from Willy Wonka, it's like everybody hates that character it's this spoiled brat, entitled, I want it and I want it now. Yeah. And to me, in the first part of the story, that's the prodigal son. You ever know any people like that?
People, I've tried to avoid those types of people. No.
Right. We do, yeah.
Honestly, I think there's spaces where I've had to learn that maybe I've been a little bit like that, where I was very kind of overly self-consumed with what was going on for me in my world and what I needed, and I didn't care who it impacted necessarily. You know what I mean? So having those come to Jesus moments.
That's good. That's very good self-reflection, because I do think my driving point would be that there is part of that in all of us. Yeah. But I think to look at what is driving somebody, and I do think we see them out a lot of people that have this sense of entitlement. They're the people that get impatient in the drive-through line. They're everything they've got, they want it now, and it's everybody else's fault, and the world kind of has to revolve around them. So that is the prodigal son. Yeah. And so then he goes off, and people know the story, but he gets off, and he blows it. Yeah. He spends it all. It kind of reminds me of, you hear these stories of people winning the lottery, right? And they
broke within a couple.
It's like, how do they spend all of that? Yeah. But they don't know how. But then his dad had worked to build this, and he gets it all at once. And there's something to be said about how he received things like that with the responsibility that goes in. But he loses it, and so he ends up hitting rock bottom, for which a young Jewish boy or young man would be, he's feeding the pigs, which is unkosher, and he's so hungry. There's a famine that he looks at what the pig slop is and says, "That looks pretty good. That's
better than nothing."
Better than nothing. Yeah. And so that, in alcohol, AA, they talk about hitting rock bottom.
Yeah, that would be rock bottom.
Yeah, because I think sometimes a lot of people, they do try to turn around, but they haven't really hit rock bottom. Yeah. And what turned him around was he hit rock bottom. That was rock bottom for him. And he said, well, this isn't working out. and the only place I know is to go home. But, can you imagine, is my dad, I was so despicable, my dad going to take me back. I mean, and I've spent my inheritance, so maybe he'll just take me as one of his hired hands. And so he rehearses his speech, and he makes the way home.
Yeah.
And then there's that beautiful scene of him, at the end of the long driveway is the way I picture it in my mind's eye. And his dad sees his son who he thought was dead, and he drops everything he's going. He goes running towards his son, and he embraces him.
Yeah.
And it just, I can't, I tried to get that across. I don't know if I did in the service today. It's just like, what an incredible hug that must have been for both of them.
Yeah.
For the prodigal who thought that he might be like turned away, who's going with his hand.
For all intents and purposes, he probably should have been turned away.
Right. Yeah, he should have.
So,
but the dad who thought his son was dead, and it's probably out of his corner of his eye been looking down that driveway for no telling how long, hoping that his son would come home, and to see that happen, just what an incredible moment in that hug. And I think that to me is a sort of the high point of that whole story that draws us in.
Yeah.
Because there's a part of us that needs that hug.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think some people would consider like a get out of jail free card or whatever, but at some level, I think it's something that, like, as we look at it and try to understand it, trying to figure out like what the definition of grace is that's what you're looking at right there. Is again, all intents and purposes, you should have been turned away. You should have been like, hey, you got what you're getting from me. If you squandered it, you squandered it. Go on. But
I mean, and I kind of imagine again in my mind's eye that like he has rehearsed this thing. It's in the scripture. I was going to tell him that I've sinned against you and against God, and I'm
just let me work for you.
I'm not worthy. Just let me work. And so like he's been this long. This isn't a distant country, so I don't know how long it's taken him to get home. Yep. He had been thinking about that and rehearsing it. And so his dad's there. His dad's got him, and he's trying to tell this. He's trying to tell this speech is rehearsed, and his dad's like, "Shh, what are you talking about?
Enjoy the hug.
What are you talking about? You're my boy."
Yeah.
No, he's fine. Go. So just incredible, as you said, a story and picture of word picture of grace.
I do wonder. I wonder if people out there have the same wonder. Sometimes sometimes I can sympathize with the younger brother though too. A little bit of like, when he kind of gets frustrated almost to the point it's like I've been.
Oh, you mean the older brother?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, the older brother.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like. And like I've been here this whole time doing what I should do, and like why don't I ever get anything celebrated or whatever? You know what I mean? Like I can understand that.
Well, yeah, and
that feeling at least.
Well, and here's the thing: his dad is throwing a party.
Yeah.
Okay, so the elder son has been the good boy. He has stayed home. He has worked hard.
Yeah.
But there is conditions on his love with his dad, and he feels like his dad's got conditions on him. So the brother's already spent half of it. So anything that gets spent from that point on is coming out of his inheritance.
Yeah.
And so this big party, is coming out of his inheritance. Is a way of thinking of it like that.
Yes.
So, but it is, and I think what we try to put limits on the grace and the love of God.
Yeah.
We have the scarcity mentality that there's only so much. And, and then resources, we're working on budgets. And there are limited resources here, earthly resources.
Yeah.
But I think if Jesus is making this overarching point, it is that the grace of God, there are no limits to that.
Yeah.
It's eternal. And so, yes, I love you, but I love my son too, because you can love more than one person.
Sure.
And you can't spend all the love that this loving father is going to, to give to you or has for you. So,
right.
But yeah, I mean, I can identify with that because I, in a lot of ways, have been the good son. I've been in church, I've worked hard, and go with that stuff. But, I think that's where the self-examination and evaluation has to come in is how am I living my life in outward ways or maybe in subtle ways that maybe I don't even know that are keeping the prodigal from coming home.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes within the doors of the church, we can do that.
Sure.
You know, that was, I won't go into all the details of the end of my sermon, but that is a part, is that like, if we're called to anything, we're called for the lost. Mm-hmm. And this is a parable about God's love for the lost. And so if we're inside the church, yeah, we can be lost in a way, but we're called to the world.
Yeah.
And so are we doing things that are keeping the prodigal from returning, mm-hmm. you know, in the ways in which we're posturing ourselves?
Yeah. I think that's good, you know, because, and I think that's something we have to think through, because I don't think church universal was ever intended to just be you cuddling in a building and that's it. You know, like I think it was always supposed to be spaces and community as like a hub of, you know, where it like kind of goes out. I think of it kind of like almost like a radio signal, that there's this tower and that the news comes out from it, you know, and goes to all these different places or the radio stations or whatever. You know, that's kind of what I think it should be here, is like, you know, we're hub, we get this central of information, but then we take it to our neighborhoods, we take it to our job places, we take it to our grocery store. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
That it was never just supposed to only be here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So, yeah. And so I do want to go on to sort of the summation of things and have a little chat about that. And then if we get finished a little early here on Father's Day, it's okay too.
It is what it is.
But, you know, I brought into the closing that I was at VBS for the first part of the week. Then I wrote my sermon, and you know, I will be honest, you know, I spent maybe 3 hours on my sermon. I usually spend more. Kind of got it together, and then I got off to an annual conference, and it's still cooking in my mind.
Right.
So the rest of what I'm looking at in the week is going to be filtering through the prodigal son. So the conference began, our first session, with a guy named Rodrigo Cruz, great pastor, started the Net Church. They have 3 campuses in Gwinnett County. Just another story for another day. But he is the DS of the district where we were. So as the host DS, he gets up to welcome everybody. And he puts a challenge for us. And basically, I'm not going to get into those numbers, but he starts like the prodigal son story does, with big numbers and then taking them down to smaller, manageable numbers. Because he starts with, like, how many people are not affiliated or associated with the church in North Georgia, about looking at, I think he looked at either Pew Research or Mission Insight. And he had those numbers. I mean, he had them exact. I just had to round them off in church today. But he had those numbers, and it's a lot. It's a lot more than I thought that it would be. And I think counted in that are people who might call themselves Christian, but they've just got burned out on church. They're what I call D-church, you know, or, you know, they're kind of post-church going people, but they're not from the church. But certainly people that are unchurched, maybe have never heard the gospel, or, you know, are living outside the church. So there's a huge mission field, and it's almost unfathomable how big it is in North Georgia. And then he breaks it down to how many United Methodists is. And then he breaks it down to, like, well, if we were to take on Jesus' challenge of making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation world, if we were to take that on, what would that look like? How we could break that down? And he used, you know, we do 4-year quadrilateral quadrenniums in the Methodist Church. So he broke it down in 4 years, and he got it down to, and it's still a big number, it's still like 7 a month, I think, that we would have to be, each individual United Methodist, and I think there's like 285,000 in that. So I don't know what that breaks down, and I don't know if we kind of got lost in the numbers there, but what that would look like if Hickory flat, it would be an interesting thing to do, is to look at the size of our congregation, our active membership, look at the unchurched in our community, and what would that look like. So to me, there was this something about, like, taking it to 100, which seems like a big number, to 10, to there was a father who had 2 sons. And so, you know, I thought about throughout that, and there was a lot about evangelism and getting outside the walls of the church at the conference. And so I was inspired by that.
I liked how you brought in, too, when you were kind of talking through this. And if you didn't see the sermon, you can catch up. It gets posted online. But you were talking about how, you know, the lost could look different than the expectation that we have of people who should be in our pews or whatever.
Right.
Because, I mean, if you're looking just numerically at big numbers, like, yeah, they're not going to necessarily value the exact same things we value right away. They're not going to walk in and go, oh, man, this, I don't know, you know.
Well, I mean, we have to disciple them to be the best people that they can be, that God
Right.
intended them to be, not to be little
Clones
of us, to sing and dress and act and believe the way we do. We got to meet them as Jesus met the prodigal.
Yep.
But so it's not to conform to something, but to be transformed by in that
That love.
by that love. And so that was a point. I'm glad you got it. I wasn't sure I nailed that home as much as I wanted to, but I think that's where we have to sit back and say, are we like the elder son? Are we like the Pharisees? And we like to sit in and talk about how bad the world is and how we need to reach the world and all that kind of stuff, but have we really evaluated what that would mean and look like for us? That would mean going outside of our comfort zones to make relationships that with people who maybe aren't like us, or might be hostile to us, or might be hostile to the message of the church. And so, what is learning their stories so that they can hear our stories look like? And it's not easy. No. It's sometimes just easier just to sit and let things be the way they have been. Sure. But that's not how the church has been created to be.
Yeah. I mean, the design was to go to the people, and whatever that looks like. I think that's why, I know it's probably been a few months since we talked about it, but I really valued the fresh expression movement that was kind of happening through the Methodist Church and stuff like that, of this idea of like, maybe it's not Sunday mornings that you need to meet some of these people. Maybe it's Thursday nights at sidelines, at trivia, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it could be anywhere, that people kind of want to gather, that you could bring,
Well, I mentioned
you build relationship, but then
I mentioned Rodrigo and the church he started called the Net, which is there's a word picture there, casting the net wide, and it's an intentionally multi-ethnic, all-inclusive kind of church.
Right.
But what they did from the very beginning was, one of their Sundays, they don't have worship with hymn sing stuff. They have worship, but they go and serve in the community.
I love that.
And they were having more people come on those Sundays than they were on the Sundays when they were inside the church, because people were come from the neighborhoods and stuff, people they met that want to make a difference and want to reach the world. And so people were hearing their story. So I love that. And I think it'd be interesting, even if we just tried a Mission Sunday sometime. I don't know if that we would do it every week, but I think that's worth trying sometime, as to going outside of ourselves.
Just set up a Sunday. Don't worry about the preaching, the music. Just go grab a team and go somewhere.
And so, I'll close with this, because we're going to end up being as long as we always are.
That's how we do it.
That's how we do it.
It's like riding a bike.
Yeah. So, but on Friday night at annual conference, there was the ordination services where, people that have gone to seminary or gone to licensing school or whatever, there's a credentialing of all that. And it's a beautiful worship service. It always is.
Yep.
It's very moving, always is. This year, it was particularly moving. I mean, because there were some dynamics at play with what everybody's been through from COVID. And a lot of those people that they started out this process in COVID. They were in seminary in COVID. I mean, it's been a hard few years. And then all of the disaffiliation stuff that's gone through. And maybe some of those candidates wondering, is this something I really want to do with this group of people? Because I don't know this church is going to make it, because of all the hardship that was under that. And, as clergy, we were feeling that and being beat up with that too. And so, but there were lots of ordinands, and there was lots of celebration. It was just a beautiful thing in this service. The message that the bishop from Korea had was beautiful. But then in the end, there is an altar call, and it's every annual conference. It's the same thing. The bishop, whoever's the bishop, will give a invitation to people who want to respond to a call to ministry to come forward. And there's always a few that come forward, 8, 10, 12 out of, 1,000 or so people that are there. But they're coming in specifically, answering a call to probably ordained ministry.
Right.
The bishop threw it wider this time, and she's going to preach here in September, and I can't wait for people to get to know her, because she just has so much warmth about her, and comfort about her. And so she opened it wasn't just like to be licensed or to go to seminary, whatever, but it was like to join in ministry. And then it was to some people hear me and maybe just need a hug, maybe just need an embrace at this time.
Yeah.
I think that's what she said, something like that. And I'm sitting on the second row and watching this thing happen. And so, it starts, and one young man comes, and I think it's obvious that he's responding to the ordination. But then a couple of youth come, and then a couple more youth come, and then there are youth running to the stage. I wish I had a video of it, running to the stage to come in and participate in this huge group hug. And there's like 50, you saw the pictures, probably like 50 people standing there just hugging each other and hugging in a group there. And it lasted for like 5 minutes.
Awesome.
It was just incredibly moving in a picture of the church. And because they were all young people, it's like our church has hope. Our church has a future.
Yeah.
People are running to respond to this message of big love. That was the title of the sermon. It was like a big love of God that He has for the whole world. And so I thought of that hug between the prodigal son and his father, and just how beautiful that was. And then I got to see this beautiful big hug and big love and that. So, that's that's an image that can keep me going for a while and give me hope for a while. And so, as I say, I scoured the internet looking for good pictures of it, and was hoping to find video. I think you have to watch it. I think you have to see the video of it, and they haven't posted at least that I could find the service online as of yet when I was looking last night. So, anyway. So that's it. That's the prodigal son, and I think it's something. Well, I will end this way. It doesn't tie up with a nice little bow, right?
Yeah.
We don't know what the end of the story is, because to remind you, the story ends with the father going out to talk to the elder son who's angry and bitter that they're having a party for the younger son, and he's trying to get him to come in, and we don't know if he did or not.
Yeah.
And so that's for us to decide: are we going to come in or go out and we receive the prodigal? So, it's a challenging message.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, to kind of just wrap up is, if you've got any stories that are along these lines that you have felt that maybe you've responded to, or maybe you kind of feel like the older brother and you're kind of sitting on the out, we'd love to have those conversations, and even in the chats below the videos and stuff like that, we'd love to have those responses just to kind of hear and see kind of where we're at, and all that stuff. So feel free to drop those in there. If there's something more personal, you can always send us an email to either one of us to kind of have some of those conversations. We'd love to meet you for coffee and kind of keep talking through these things. I think that's the beauty of the parables is like, even though there's some layers to it, it kind of meets us all at different spaces and in different ways. And
that's the genius of it, because you can hear them many, many different times in your life and hear them in different ways, and it speaks to us. Whereas that is the power of a good story, but it's also a power of the parables that Jesus taught. They had so many layers, and some of them, and we're going to get into it in coming weeks, some of them were complicated and not as quickly evident as the Good Samaritan, the prodigal son. Easy, I think, to understand, hard to put in practice.
Yeah.
And so we'll continue on next week with another one. And
absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Again, happy Father's Day to all those fathers that may be watching or that might be sitting beside you. Give them an elbow hit in the side or something like that, and tell them happy Father's Day. But other than that, we'll catch you guys next time.
All right. God bless everybody.